The sky was silent. The clouds were absent. The cracked ground counted the days since the last drop of rain. Israel was facing the greatest drought in its history, and the people, in despair, were trying to understand why they were suffering so much. But while many murmured, there was one man who stood firm, Elijah the Tishbite. Born in a time of idolatry and confusion, Elijah was called to be the voice of God at a time when almost no one wanted to listen. King Ahab and his wife, Jezebel, had introduced the worship of Baal, a strange and cruel god, into the kingdom. The altars of the Lord were abandoned, and true prophets were persecuted. Elijah, however, was not silent. It was by divine command that he appeared before the king to make an announcement that would change everything. Neither dew nor rain shall fall these years, except at my word. Having said that, he disappeared. As the drought spread like wildfire, Elijah was given another direction, to take refuge by the brook Cherith. There, far from the eyes of the king's soldiers, he was sustained in an extraordinary way. Ravens, birds seen as unclean by tradition, were chosen to bring bread and meat every morning and evening. The water from the brook served as his sustenance. It was divine provision in its purest and most unexpected form. But time passed, and even the brook dried up. Elijah was then sent to Zarephath, a small town outside Israel. There, he found a widow on the verge of despair. She carried only a handful of flour and a drizzle of oil, enough to prepare the last loaf of bread for herself and her son before she waited to die. Elijah asked her to prepare some first, promising that the food would not run out while the drought lasted. With faith, the woman obeyed, and the miracle happened. Day after day, the flour and oil were renewed. Hunger was no longer a threat. One day, however, tragedy struck the house. The widow's son fell ill and died. Faced with his mother's grief, Elijah went up to the room where the boy was lying, stretched himself out on it 3 times and cried out to the Lord. And God listened. The boy opened his eyes. The cry of death gave way to the cry of life. The woman, moved, declared, "Now I know that you are a man of God." But Elijah's mission was far from over. God sent him back to the heart of the crisis, Samaria. The reunion with Ahab would be tense. Elijah then proposed a challenge, a confrontation between the true God and Baal. The stage would be Mount Carmel. There, in front of the people, Elijah faced 450 prophets of Baal. Each side had to prepare a sacrifice on an altar, but without lighting it on fire. The God who responded with fire was the true one. From dawn until dusk, the prophets of Baal shouted, danced, and cut themselves, crying out in vain. No sound, no fire, no answer. Then Elijah approached the altar of the Lord, now in ruins. He rebuilt it with 12 stones, representing the tribes of Israel. He put the wood and the sacrifice on it, and ordered water to be poured over it 3 times, filling even the ditch around it. He then raised his voice in prayer, simple and direct. "Answer me, Lord, so that this people may know that you are God." And the fire fell. It consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the water, everything. The people fell on their faces, declaring, "The Lord alone is God." Immediately afterwards, Elijah went up to the top of the mountain and prayed for rain. 7 times his servant went up to see the sky. On the 7th time, he announced a small cloud, the size of a man's hand. Shortly afterwards, the heavens opened. The rain returned, and with it, hope. But the victory at Carmel ignited Jezebel's fury. Elijah, now marked for death, fled. In the desert, exhausted, he asked God to take his life. He fell asleep under a juniper tree. An angel touched him, offering him baked bread and water. With this strength, Elijah walked 40 days to Mount Horeb. There he hid in a cave. He expected to meet God in a strong wind, an earthquake, or a fire. But the Lord came in a gentle whisper. And in that silence, Elijah discovered that he was not alone. 7,000 in Israel had not yet bowed to Baal. God revived him and gave him a new mission: to anoint kings, prepare the way, and call a successor. That successor was Elisha. Once, while they were walking together, a whirlwind appeared. Chariots of fire and flaming horses separated the two. Elijah was taken to heaven in a storm of glory. Elisha was left with his cloak, ready to continue the work. Elijah didn't just prophesy. He confronted kings, challenged crowds, resurrected a boy, faced loneliness, and saw God in the midst of silence. His story is a powerful reminder that divine fire is not limited to the sky. It burns in the hearts of believers, even in times of drought. In Elijah, we see the portrait of courageous faith, unreserved obedience, and the certainty that the true God answers, whether with fire, rain, or a whisper.